Alright, so greatest common factor. What that means is when you're looking at problems that they have common things. There's numbers that are in common, or even coefficients that are in common. And that's what we sort of have to figure out on these problems, is to figure out, okay, what our greatest common factor is, and then once you figure it out, what you do is you divide it, and you see what's left, and that makes your factors. Okay? When you do a greatest common factor, you're looking for the biggest number that everything will divide by. Okay? So when I look at number 1, there's an 8 and a 12. Well, I know 2 will go into both 8 and 12. But 2 is not my greatest common factor because there's a number bigger than 2 that goes into 8 and 12. 4. When you're trying to decide what your greatest common factor is, you want to look at the two numbers. Pick the smallest one. See if the smallest one goes into it. If it does, that's the answer. If it doesn't, then you need to go smaller than that number. So I know it's a number smaller than 8, and then 4 will work. So 4 is my greatest common factor. What I'm going to do is I'm going to divide everything by 4. And so my answer, when you factor the greatest common factor, you put the 4 outside of parentheses, and then what you get when you divide it goes inside the parentheses. So 8 divided by 4 is 2, and then there's still an x. And then 12 divided by 4 is 3. And that's all you do. You figure out what the greatest common factor is, and you divide everything by it. Question so far? Now, sometimes it's not just the numbers that you look at. Sometimes you have to look at the letters, the variables. That only happens when there are variables in common with every single thing. See, there was only an x with this one. There wasn't an x with this one, so x was not part of my greatest common factor. When I look at this one, x is still not part of my greatest common factor because there's not an x with this one. So there has to be the variable with every single thing, and I'll show you one in just a second. So, looking at this, what number goes into both 2, 4, and 6? 2. So 2 is my greatest common factor. I'm going to divide everything by 2. 2 goes outside the parentheses, and you're left with x squared plus 2x plus 3. Okay. Now, on number 3 and number 4, this is where there are x's in common that we have to think about. So first, think about the numbers. We have 2 and 4. 2 will go both into both 2 and 4. So I know when I divide, I'm going to put a 2. Okay. Then you look at your x's, and what you do is you pick the smallest amount of x's that each one of them have. So there's x to the third and there's x squared. My smallest is x squared. They both have an x squared. So x squared would be part of the greatest common factor. Okay. So we would have 2x squared. Now, you do 2 divided by 2, which is 1. And if you'd like to put a 1 there just because it's there, that's fine. Look at your x's and you subtract. So you get rid of 2 x's out of the 3. So how many x's do you have left over? Only 1. Okay? So it would be 1x if you want to write it that way. You can just write x. You don't have to write the 1. But if it's helpful, you can write that 1. Okay? And then here you divide 4 and 2. You get 2. And then you get rid of 2 x's out of those 2 x's. So it goes away. And you get 1x plus 2. Questions about that one? Okay, let's look at the last one on the greatest common factor. So the greatest common factor between 16 and 18, the number that goes into 16 and 18 is a 2, I think. 4 will go into 16 but not 18. 9 will go into 18. 3 will go 18 but not 16. So we're just going to stick with the 2's. Okay, look at the x's. One of them has an x squared and one of them has an x. So x is in common. Because you want to pick the smallest that you see. Even though it's called greatest common factor, you pick the smallest letters. Okay, look at the y's. We have a y and we have a y squared. So we're going to pick a y. Okay. Questions about the greatest common factor on that one? Alright, so we have 2xy, and now we have to divide. 16 divided by 2 is 8. Alright, x's and y's, we need to get rid of one x and one y, so what do we have left over? An x, good. Okay, here, 18 and 2, divide. We need to get rid of one x and one y, so we're left with a y. Okay, questions about that?